Today, we're going to talk about the deal that Trump is trying to strike between Putin and Zelenskyy to end the Ukraine-Russia war. And there's a lot of detractors in Republican media and politics like Mike Pence, Mark Levin, and others that are not really thrilled with what Trump's doing. Of course, on the left, there's Adam Kinzinger and all of those type of establishment people who are not happy about it as well. We're going to talk about not just what's going on, but I do have some historical context that you're not allowed to see on television. Most Republicans will not show you. And to be quite honest, if I had a show on television and I showed you what I'm about to show you today, they'd probably kick me off television faster than they did Tucker Carlson. So the reason that nobody knows what's going on and nobody has full context is because, of course, there's left versus right and Trump versus establishment, but there's also so many layers to the fake opposition, and a lot of people are caught in it. And I kind of stepped into this morning mentioning Mark Levin. I said, if your parents watch Mark Levin, they're brainwashed, try to wean them off of the TV. And of course, I posted that to Facebook where most of my audience watches Mark Levin. So it was funny, but I will say it inspired me to make this video. I'm excited about it. I'm glad to be here. And I pray and I hope that people just consider what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with me, but consider, because if you're just watching mainstream television and you're just watching Fox News and Newsmax and the approved people who get to speak at conferences when it comes to the Republican Party, you're never going to learn this information because there's a concerted effort to keep it away from you. Thank you for being here. Dream Rare Podcast starts now. It's going to be a good episode, and I got some things to show you.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on Facebook? What's going on YouTube? What's going on Rumble? What's going on Apple and all the other places that you may or may not be listening to this video? Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Unless I don't appreciate you, there's very few of you I don't appreciate, but most of you I do. Let's get to the topic because I want to talk about female pilots at the end of this. There's like a controversy over female pilots, and I have some fun stuff to share about thoughts that I have based on literally science and natural order. But however, we're going to start with Trump trying to strike a deal with Putin and Zelenskyy. And I want to get right out and say this real quick before I get into more interesting stuff. I understand for those who are critics of Trump, I understand his downfalls. I understand that he does play ball with the establishment in some cases, but I do truly believe that the one thing that he's really different on, maybe not the one thing, there's a few things. The Ukraine-Russia stuff, like Trump really does not play 100% ball with, the establishment. And this is why they hate him. I believe this is the main reason they hate him. There's a lot of things that they don't like about Trump because even if he's kind of controllable, he's not totally controllable. And I think, the people that pretend to like him really don't like him. They just like him enough. Like, yeah, he'll do what we say. But on this, they're really upset with what he's doing because he sees it as it is. It's like we funneled hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. This war never needed to happen. He's trying to put an end to it. Mike Pence came out today and said something in opposition. And so did Mark Levin. And that's what I want to talk about today because Mark Levin said something along the lines of, is Putin going to have a real election now that we leave Ukraine? A question that I think everybody wants to also know would be, is Ukraine going to have a real election? Because Zelenskyy has been holding off elections for a long time. So if you're going to be concerned about Russian elections, that's what you're concerned about on your show. Are you not concerned with Ukrainian elections and the fact that we're giving them hundreds of billions of dollars, yet they don't have an election? And the reason, for those who don't know, the reason that he and our establishment's not concerned about Ukrainian democracy and elections is because we control, to some extent, or to most extent, Zelenskyy is a puppet of the West. I'm not going to bore you with the thing I've told people before. Maybe you've never heard this if it's your first time watching. But Zelenskyy is like the plant of plants. They should make movies about him. He had a production studio called Kvartal 95, I believe it was called. He was a successful comedian. Kvartal 95 and his partner Kolomoisky, who owned a television station, who has a lot of banking controversy. Just look into that guy, Kolomoisky. He had this show on television called Servant of the People, where Zelenskyy played the president of the president of Ukraine for a couple seasons. brainwash the people of Ukraine into being like, oh, he's a comedian who's playing a teacher on the show that's just like us, and he's going to fight corruption. So using television propaganda as him as a main character playing the president, they got enough people to want him as president. And then people voted for him as president. And then his production studio doubled as a political party. I mean, he's the ultimate plant. That one of the greatest movies that should be made is how Zelenskyy basically got over Ukraine using a production studio that doubled as it's like the ultimate agent. It's a fascinating story. He's like a real life James Bond, except he just started a war with Russia. But anyway, all of this was the West trying to take over Ukraine and get closer to Russia. I mean, you could look at I think it's the 2014 revolution. I think it's a real insurrection. Dozens of people died, upwards of hundreds of people either died or got injured. But if you look at how the West presents it, it's like, this is a revolution of dignity and it's this great thing. That's because that was us taking over Ukraine. We took over Ukraine. We established a puppet president. That's why they don't care about elections in Russia and Ukraine. Here's what I want people to understand and what I want to tell people. I'm consistent and I'm an honest person, where it's like, do I think that these people really care about elections? Like Mark Levin just really cares about democracy in Russia, right? Because we really what they want is they want to control, and I'm not saying Mark Levin specifically, but people like that, they want to control the outcome. If they can control the outcome, then they don't care about an election. Zelensky's who they want. They don't care about the election. Putin is not who they want. They don't want Putin there. So who would they replace him with? Do they really want this fair and equal election? What if Putin wins a fair election? They want to take over the country. Someone said you're believing Russian propaganda mostly. I'm not glad you said that, but it's like, I hope you listen and pay attention, because I'm not basing my opinion based off of something I heard from Russia or something that I heard 2 years ago. I research, I study, I know the history of the last 100 years in Russia and the last 100 years in America. And all of this goes way further back. So whether it's the 2014 revolution, which is really a pivotal point in what went on between Russia and Ukraine, it's also a lot deeper than even that. But the mainstream media and the real propaganda wants you to believe that it just started when Putin invaded, or for our other ally, that on one day everything started and that's when I'm not saying these events didn't happen, but if you're going to actually have a chronological order of what happened, they're missing 50 steps because they don't want to tell you the 50 steps. Because if they told you the 50 steps, in some people's mind, it would justify, like, oh, if you bankrolled a country and then got a puppet president and were knocking on his doorstep, the same way that, if China started funding weapons and giving money and weapons to cartels to attack America, if we then defended ourselves, would you say, oh, that's when it started, when America, went to Mexico? Well, what about the fact that one of our enemies abroad bankrolled the entire situation? So, they don't they don't tell you the steps in chronological order, because they don't want you to know the steps. Because if you knew the steps, like Lindsey Graham flying over to Ukraine and saying, let's go, as they're giving them weapons, you would be like, well, it probably started there. The conflict probably started before. But anyway, I'm going to bring up this picture. It's a classic historical picture. It's FDR in the middle. It's Winston Churchill to the left, and it's Stalin to the right. This is the communist teaming up with the Englishman, and you can call FDR what you want. I don't know what you think about him, but we teamed up with the communists. Hold on one second. I'm just going my air just came on. I don't even need it on, or my heat. I just want to turn it off a little bit. So we teamed up with the communists in World War II to, fight the enemy, etc. I want to bring it back even before that, because when it comes to Russia, people need to understand, if you want to be honest, millions of Russians were ethnically slaughtered in the Bolshevik Revolution, right? Trotsky, Lenin, they created this Marxist-Leninist movement, which killed millions of Russians, and they're one of the worst, I think, atrocities in modern history that most people don't know about, because, to be quite frank, the people that got killed in those atrocities don't control American media. If they did, I'm sure they'd make 10,000 movies about it and documentaries, and you'd know everything about it and you learn it in school. But the people who died and who were the victims of the Bolshevik revolution are not in control of American politics and media, no matter how much the American media and politics says so. With that being said, I'm going to show you a clip from the Times of Israel, which is an Israeli publication, which talks about before the Bolshevik Revolution got started and how it was inspired, in some cases, from New York City. So, spoiler alert, if I ever showed this on Fox News or Newsmax or whatever, like, I don't believe I would be able to have a show. I don't think you're allowed to see this stuff. Like, I think you get blacklisted pretty much for explaining this history. However, I'm going to show you the Times of Israel. So if you want to call them anti-Semitic, even though they're an Israeli publication, that's on you. I'm going to go through this history that you're not going to learn. Ready? This is the Times of Israel. The headline, it's from 2016. It says, Trotsky's Day Out, How a Visit to New York City Influenced the Bolshevik Revolution. Author Kenneth Ackerman explores the life of the Jewish radical in the weeks leading up to the overthrow of the Russian provisional government. So once again, Times of Israel, Israeli publication, they're saying how Trotsky's Day in New York City influenced the Bolshevik Revolution, right? That's where millions of Russians were ethnically slaughtered. Let's read the article. It says in January 1917, a strikingly handsome radical revolutionary, Lev Davidovich Bronstein, otherwise known as Leon Trotsky, arrived in this vast cosmopolitan cultural melting pot. Jews made up over a fifth of the city's expanding population of 5.5 million. Most came from the Pale of Settlement, a western region of Imperial Russia fleeing pogroms and violent persecution. The largest Jewish presence in New York was on the Lower East Side, where Yiddish was the language of the streets, cafes, theaters, cinemas, and Jewish printing press, which was predominantly socialist, left-wing, and internationalist in outlook. In 1917, a strikingly handsome radical revolutionary, Lev Davidson Bronstein, Leon Trotsky, arrived. In several instances throughout the book, Ackerman documents how the Jewish community played a significant role in Trotsky's life during his brief stay in the city. Many of these Jews in New York knew Trotsky as someone who had outspokenly denounced the Tsar for his anti-Semitism, said Ackerman, so he was very popular. On the first day Trotsky arrived in New York, he gave an interview to Vorwärts, the Forward, a Yiddish socialist paper that then had a daily readership of 200,000, a circulation rivaling that of the New York Times. So Leon Trotsky's real name, you've probably never heard because it's super Jewish, and I don't think they really want you to, know that. But it also says, this is an Israeli paper, by the way. This is not some like smear of, it's like just, someone going over what happened. He flew to New York, where a bunch of Jewish socialists were that had press that were rivaling the New York Times, and he was greeted with a massive welcome. And they're saying that trip inspired the Bolshevik Revolution. If you don't know, the Bolshevik Revolution was millions of people getting slaughtered in Russia. So I just want to play this clip real quick of Dennis Prager, because most people in Republican media, you're not allowed to say this. Like, if you say what I just said, you get blacklisted. You never get invited on television. If you had a television spot, you probably get kicked off. You're not allowed to talk about it. The one instance I could find of somebody talking about it is Dennis Prager explaining it one time. I'm just going to play this clip because, of course, if I said this, it's called anti-Semitism. But if Dennis Prager says it, hopefully it's not considered that, because I'm going to play it here.
Every ism except Nazism was founded and or led disproportionately by Jews. You name it. Marxism, humanism, socialism, environmentalism, feminism, Jews. It's Jews.
Once again, I'm not allowed to say that because that's hate speech, but Dennis Prager just said it. So if you look at, the Communist Manifesto, it was written by Karl Marx, who was that ethnicity. Leon Trotsky, whose real name they never really told you, because just like they did with Jack Ruby, whose name was Jack Rubenstein, and it's not just random that his name was that. He told his rabbi that he had a motive for doing it, which nobody even knows. You could look it up on Google right now, but most people have no idea. But anyway, so you have Leon Trotsky, Lenin, Karl Marx. These are three of the biggest architects of communism, Marxism, Leninism, and then it led to millions of Russians being slaughtered, right? This happened in history over 100 years ago, or less than 100 years. I mean, let's just say around 100 years ago, depending when you trace the start of it. You get what I'm saying. With that being said, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because that literally happened. But in this world, if you notice that there's, and I'm not saying that everybody does this because it's not true, but if you notice that there is a group, not all people of this race, not all people of this religion, but some of them that are socialists, that are communists, that literally ethnically hate you, it makes more sense to the story where it's like, how could Russians kill millions of Russians? Yeah, no, I mean, that could also happen. Mao Zedong killed a bunch of Chinese people. I'm not saying it's impossible that someone kills their own people. Like, there's evil people of every group, every race, every religion, every 10,000 gender that AOC told me about. But in general, also what could happen is you could have a group of people who hate another race. But the thing is, you're only allowed to learn in this world of like, oh, this white people hate this people. Like, that's all you're allowed to learn about. You're not allowed to know that there's other groups and subsects of those groups who hate Russians or hate Americans or hate Christians. You know, there's a lot of people who hate Christians, including the founder of pornography in America said he was doing it to defile Christians, to defile white people, Anglo-Saxons. That's what he said. As I always explain to people, what's it called when you notice a guy who just so happens to be Jewish, who says that he's doing something to hurt and defile Christians and white people? What is it called when you notice that? Is there a word for someone hating you? It's called anti-Semitism, because just the mere fact of you noticing is hate speech. You're not allowed to notice Lenin, Trotsky, Marx. I'm not saying it's everyone's fault. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's real history. That's what they did. And a lot of it came from New York City. So that's in Israeli press. Why am I saying this? This is real history. So if you're a population that has had millions of your people slaughtered, now what's going on in Russia, right? I'm not a huge fan of Putin by any means, but Putin is Russian. Putin is a Christ-centric nationalist. People don't like when I say that, but that's just the truth. I'm not saying he's a hero. I'm just saying he doesn't want to slaughter millions of his people in the Bolshevik Revolution. We have pictures that show that our politicians were fine with Russia to some extent, willing to work with them when they were communists with Stalin. Yet people will tell you, oh, we just want a real election. You don't want a real election. In Ukraine, there is no election. All these people like Mark Levin don't seem to care that much. Why? Because Zelensky's the puppet. Zelenskyy is the new version of a Bolshevik. Zelenskyy is the new Western plant, whether people want to admit it or not. So once you have your plant and your plant takes over, elections are a threat to democracy. You don't want an election because he'll probably lose. So why would you want to get rid of the plant that you work so hard to get there? When it comes to Putin, I'm not a fan of him. I'm not Russian. I have no connection. Don't care about them. But he's not controlled by the West. He doesn't allow US aid and NGOs and all these things that we just slowly infiltrate every other country, take over. Ukraine, we took over. Same with a lot of Western countries. They're completely demoralized. They're completely broken. They're completely flooded with migrants. They're completely backwards. They have no future. Their entire nation has been destroyed after hundreds or thousands of years of prosperity. But they serve our interests. What are we even doing? When it comes to Russia, they want to replace Vladimir Putin. Mark Levin doesn't want him there. Mike Pence doesn't want him there. Adam Kinzinger doesn't want him there. Probably the U.S. State Department, or at least a lot of them, not the ones with Trump. I don't think they really care, but they don't want him there. So who would replace him? This is what people don't realize. If you were to somehow replace Putin, do you think the West wants a fair election? Use your brain a little bit. Think about history in general. Do you think the West wants to just have a fair election where it's two Russians completely uncontrolled by the West, completely uncontrolled by our allies, just having an election for the rest of people? Are you that stupid? Is anybody that watches my show that stupid? If they want any sort of election, one of them is going to be a Western plant, and they're going to push the Western plant. If they can't get a Western plant into office, they don't care about elections. You think they really care? There's 15 countries around the world that you don't even think about because there's no geopolitical reason right now for them to make you think about it. Everything you think is what they want you to think. It's like you don't even have thoughts of your own. It's like People even now, they're talking about USAID about every single thing all the time because Mike Pence just told them that 2 weeks ago. It's a real thing, but there's other layers to it. But anyway, if they replace Putin with a Western plant, in my very humble opinion, it would destroy the country. It's not going to be someone who likes them. It's not going to be someone who's loyal to them. It's for Western interests only. But Western interests don't even interest us. Our cities are trash. Our countries are getting flooded with migrants. Our border was open before Trump got there. Our inflation's hitting. They tried to mandate a vaccine. Like our interests don't even interest us. So why would we want to do that to another nation? And I'm not saying that we're worse than them, but that's what they want to do to Russia. They would be happy with a Lenin over a Putin. They would be happy with a Trotsky over a Putin. They would be happy with a Stalin over Putin. They don't care about these people. And these people have a right to care about themselves because they got slaughtered by the millions from a guy that they didn't even tell you his real name because his real name would hint that he's, has certain ties to certain things 100 years ago. So, when Mark Levin comes out, and by the way, with Mark Levin, Charlie Kirk said, and he's not my favorite, but I do think he's a little bit more pro-Trump and pro-America than people like Mark Levin. But anyway, Charlie Kirk's been sounding the alarm because he's so connected. He knows all this stuff, that Tom Cotton, the senator, is trying to undermine Trump's administration. This is what these fake opposition Republicans do. They tell you what you want to hear on Fox News, China, China, China. And then when Trump finally tries to put somebody in that's not a puppet, they all jump down his throat. The second that he has anybody that's not completely controlled, they jump down his throat. So Tom Cotton, according to Charlie Kirk, who knows because he's that connected, Tom Cotton is currently trying to undermine the Trump administration and stop some of his better picks. Guess who Mark Levin had on the show yesterday or this week? Go to his Twitter within the last 24 hours. Tom Cotton's coming on the show. Tom Cotton's coming on the show to talk about China. And then all the boomers brainwashed on my Facebook are like, what's so wrong about talking about China? Nothing. Talk about China all you want, but this is what they do. It's like, these idiots are so dumb. We just have to say China, 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 and they don't even realize what we're doing. Tom Cotton is undermining the Trump administration. Tom Cotton is trying to block Trump's choices. Yet he gets a promo spot while he's doing it on Mark Levin. This isn't a coincidence. This is how they brainwash you. Here's the guy who you think's on your side. Here's the guy who's trying to stop Trump's picks. Let's put him on Fox News so all the brainwashed boomers say, oh, the great one just showed me a new politician that really is calling out China. It's like they're no different than Lindsey Graham. They have the same Ukrainian policy and Israel policy on that matter as Adam Kinzinger, who everybody knows is deep state. Lindsey Graham, who everybody knows is deep state. Tom Cotton, Mark Levin, they're the same exact archetype. They're the same person with a slightly more tolerable twist because it's like, dude, just tell these Trump supporters, you're pro-Trump when it's necessary because they probably like a few things he's doing, and then stab Trump in the back when we really get somebody pro-America first. It's not a coincidence that he had Tom Cotton on the show. This is what they do. With that being said, Ukraine was the biggest obvious plant in U.S. history. I'm not, I understand that some people are from Ukraine and some people like Ukraine. I'm not asking people not, but it's like America infiltrated Ukraine. America basically overthrew their country with at least our taxpayer dollars. America got a plant in office. And then what do people want him to do? Just roll over? Yeah, let's just put a lesbian Western plant as the head of Russia. I bet that'll be real good for those people. It's like it's just so obvious. It's just so obvious. So I could talk about this a lot, but I just wanted to say, and then I'm going to move on to a very non-controversial topic of female pilots. But if you go to the history, the Bolsheviks killed millions of people in that country. Okay. And the Bolsheviks hatched their ideas and in many cases, got their inspiration, according to the press and research, in New York City. So the West has always had a role in this, whether people realize it or not. America was not socialist, but one of the biggest newspapers in New York was a Jewish socialist paper. it is what it is. But, Mark Levin's not going to talk about that. He'll probably just freak out and call it anti-Semitism because it's what they do. That's what he does. That's what they all do. Not like, the people like him, including some Christians, by the way. So people can't say it's hate speech because it's not just people of Mark Levin's ethnicity. There's other ethnicities and people who are equally as Zionist. You have a right to be Zionist. I'm not saying it's a horrible thing. I'm just saying that's what they do in the Western press. I mean, I really don't care. That's literally what they do. It's like anti-Semitism. Yeah, it's anti-Semitism to say that Trotsky flew to New York City and met with a Jewish media company that was socialist and hatched his ideas and went and then inspired Marxist Leninism that killed millions of people. Yeah, that's hate speech. Yeah, okay. And nobody's supposed to realize that, right? They're supposed to just let a Zelenskyy take over their country for the West, and then the people there are going to die, just like Ukrainians have. You think this many Ukrainians would have died if Zelenskyy wasn't president? No. Zelenskyy basically sent the Ukrainians off to die in war, and then the Russians died in war. For what? For what? So you can try to get a Western leader in Russia? Yeah, that's what people want. We need a fair election. They're not looking for a fair election. If you really think the United States and the press wants a fair election in Russia, you're an idiot. They hate a fair election. They want a non-fair election with somebody that is a plant in order to take over the country. And then in which case, like they did in Ukraine, then elections are irrelevant because once you got what you want, why'd you have an election? Right? It's a war, because he'll lose. They don't want to lose power in Ukraine. They spent $200-300 billion. And as Trump has pointed out in his recent thing to Zelenskyy, Trump has pointed out that Zelenskyy said that a lot or most of the funds, he doesn't even know where they are or that they got mismanaged. He admitted that on United States press. And the press doesn't want to talk about that. That's not a big, tenet of a lot of Fox News reporting. It's because Fox News is fake opposition. I thought everybody knew that. No, the great one is just totally real, though. No, it's fake opposition. Tucker Carlson was the only person at that network that challenges their foreign policy, Lindsey Graham, deep state, Mike Pence agenda, and they sent him packing because you can't have somebody at a news network questioning the war with Iran and the war with Russia. This is big money. This is big deep state stuff. So I thought everybody knew that. No, I guess Facebook boomers are like 40 years behind. They haven't learned anything, but not trying to be rude. It is what it is. Let me know in the comments what you think. I want to get into female pilots real quick, and then I'll read some comments. If you have some comments, save them for the end because I just want to stick to this and stay focused. So there was a plane recently that had flipped over somehow, and miraculously nobody died, which is amazing. That's great news. In Toronto, it was some subsect. I forget the exact name of it. If I looked it up, I could find it in like 2 seconds. I mean, I might as well since I'm live and I'm, I should probably. Well, let me see. I don't have the name. You could look it up. There's a lot of the mainstream flight companies. They work with smaller ones, and then they just basically like outsource the stuff. Let me actually. It's gonna bother me if I don't look it up. Sorry. Delta Airline sub name. Maybe someone in the comments can help me. Endeavor. That's what it is. Endeavor Air. Okay. Let me see. Endeavor. I just got to make sure it is. Sorry. Endeavor Air. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I apologize for the delay, but it was called Endeavor Air, and they work with Delta. So if you go to their Twitter and their social media, a lot of their posts that they still have up are all like girl boss posts. It's like girl boss. It's a plane with all women. There's no men on this board. And they're really pushing feminism in the skies. And I saw some of the videos that they had posted, and it was like, no men, a manless board. And I posted about it because obviously I'm not a fan of that sort of stuff. And there's a mixed review, especially on my Facebook page, where once again, no offense, boomers are 30 years behind on every topic, which is why the country is in the position it's in. But boomers think it's just the liberals, and they don't realize that they've fallen for fake opposition, and they're basically liberal feminists with guns. But in general, it's like a lot of people came on my Facebook page, and I wasn't expecting it, but I don't care. I mean, it's a healthy public forum. And they're like, oh, what's wrong with women pilots? What's wrong with celebrating this great endeavor in the air and, this great achievement of no men on board? And it's like, do you want me to tell you what I think is wrong with them celebrating no men on board at an airplane like it's a girl boss TikTok account? Yeah, You want me to tell you? Because I have a lot of things that I don't like about that. Let me start with my PR statement, which is not from a PR team. I'm making it up on the spot just to give people a background of what I think. Women are amazing. Women are incredible creatures. They can do a lot of awesome stuff. And there are women that are just better than men at stuff. I'm not saying that they're not. There's women that are good drivers. There's women that are good pilots. There's women that are good everything. Like, women are great, right? That's my PR statement. But also, if you look at competitions in the world, when it comes to physical competitions, if you want the best of the best, men dominate. They dominate basketball. They dominate football. They dominate literally every physical sport. There's not a physical sport that men don't dominate. They dominate everything. If you want to look at motor skills, look at a professional NASCAR. You can be a woman and do it. Look at Danica Patrick. She's amazing. She's a patriot. But at the same time, she's not a top 50 or even top 100 driver of all time. She's definitely a top 50 iconic driver, maybe a top 10 iconic driver. She's a female competing with men and doing pretty well. It's incredible. I love Danica Patrick. She's awesome. But if you want to be real, all the top drivers of all time, all of them, they're all men. Why? It's open to women. Why are they all men? If you look at chess has nothing to do with physical strength. It has everything to do with mental strength, memory, pattern recognition, and logical ability to, solve puzzles for some extent. Look at the top 100 chess players right now. You'll not be shocked to find that they're all men. They're all men. The highest ranked female competitor is 117th or something. She's not even close to the top 100. I guess she's close, but she's not in the top 100. So despite there being no gender barrier for entry, men dominate chess. So that's a mind game. Men dominate. Physical games, men dominate. Racing and motor skills, men dominate. Flying competitions, women have done well in them, but also men dominate those as well. Let's go to something like pistol shooting, right? That's something where it's like, men dominate that as well, because men just have, it seems like, a faster reaction speed, and also physical, strength plays a role in that as well, even if people wouldn't think it when it comes to the hand grip and the speed, etc. So, how about under pressure? I mean, I bet some women are really good under pressure, but biologically, probably men serve certain roles better under that too, as the ability to, stay calm in a very heated situation, although some guys do not stay calm. So I understand that there are some anomalies and some amazing women that deserve it, but it's like, I don't know what to tell people, but I'm not dumb. So I know that men dominate most of these things. So with airplanes though, I'm supposed to believe that girl boss TikTok posts are okay because women are just celebrating their wins and, we're all equal. It's like, I'm not saying that women shouldn't be able to do stuff, but it's like, it's not, I would not, I'm just being honest. I would not want to get on a plane with no men on board. That would frighten me. I would not want to do that. If you want to do that and you would think it's awesome if your pilot came out and took a TikTok selfie with a bunch of women, no men on this board, I'm not saying they're getting in a bunch of crashes. Clearly they're not. I mean, the air safety is astronomically impressive, and I'm sure that has to do with a lot of brave and strong and smart men and women. I'm not questioning that at all. It's just like we live in a society where the left is insane and the right are feminists, and they don't even know they're feminists. I'm conservative. You're a feminist. I love Trump. Okay, whatever, feminist. I get it. Yeah, you like Trump, but you're still a feminist to me. Why? Because you think like a feminist. I don't know what to tell you. It's like, let's go to the police. I like, men and women police officers, cool, but it's like men are physically faster. Like every aspect of what it would take to be a good police officer. Obviously, there's some fatties on the police force that are not good at anything, but it's like men are better police officers. Men are better security guards. Like some of these security guards are a joke. You got these obese guys who can't walk. You got I remember this one apartment complex my friend used to work at. They had like an 80-year-old lady as a security guard. It's like, you might as well just have a cardboard box standing there with a sign saying, don't walk in. What's an 80-year-old lady going to do as a security guard? I like older women and old ladies, and I would never disrespect my elders, but they don't make good security guards. Like, what is this controversial? Is what I'm saying? Like, I thought this was well known, at least on the right, but now this is like some radical controversial statement. I'm not saying that's why the plane flipped over. I'm not saying that had anything to do with it. It could have been a guy, but in general, it's like, can we start to have this conversation? Obviously, DEI is a horrible idea, especially for important things like a pilot. I want the best pilot. I want the pilot that outperforms all the other pilots. I don't want someone who got there because they're trying to get rid of the men, and they are trying to do that. If you look at United posted this big, this big poster. I think it was I forget which airport it was in, but I took a picture of it, and it had a bunch of like minority women, and it was like, oh, the skies are female. And it's like, dude, if a woman of any ethnicity becomes the greatest pilot, then that's what it is. I mean, I would love for them to be successful. It's no disrespect, but it's like, they're in such a rush to get rid of the white guys who are good pilots, which is most of them. And it's like, well, the future of the skies is female. Why would the future of the skies be female? It doesn't even make sense. It's like the future of chess is female. It's not, though, because men are going to dominate chess forever. And the best woman's not going to barely be able to crack the top 100. The best woman in the world right now can't compete with the top 100 guys. The future of the chess is male. And some females will do well, but men will dominate like they do every single sport, even though it's a mental sport. Because whether it's mental, whether it's physical, men and women are different. There's different biology to them. There's different pros and strengths. It's like the old saying: if you think a fish should run fast, then you'll think a fish is pathetic, or a turtle. Oh, it's so slow. But if you look at a turtle in the ocean, it's actually fast because that's where they are faster, or a fish in the ocean. So it's like if you're comparing a woman, Caitlin Clark is interesting, and I think she's really revolutionizing female sports. Good for her. She earned it. But she's never going to beat LeBron James. So if you're having a competition, she's never going to win. She's never going to be the best. She'll be the best female, which is extraordinarily lower than the bar of the best males. The worst person in the NBA could probably beat Caitlin Clark 11-0 one-on-one. So, what does that mean? These things translate to other things, whether people want to admit it or not. It's just we're so far down the path that even me saying that with Republicans is apparently like a controversial statement. They're like, what are you talking about? Dude, I don't want a bunch of females on a plane taking selfies because they're happy there's no guys on board. That's ego. That's not like safety. It's like, no men here. That sucks. I wish there was one, at least the co-pilot or something, have a dude somewhere with a lot of experience. Now we're just going to do it. The future of the skies is female. Can the future of the skies be the best pilots? And if the best pilots are males, can we just admit that and keep it moving, or no? We got to just destroy society real quick because, boomers want to watch Mark Levin and liberals want to watch Rachel Maddow. Oh, be quiet, Anomaly. Mark Levin's on the television. He's going to tell me about China with Tom Cotton, who's currently undermining the Trump administration. Man, they're really sticking it to China. Okay. Oh, shut up, you fascist. I'm watching Rachel Maddow now. And Rachel Maddow told me that, everything is hate speech and everybody in the world is a fascist. Okay. Okay, liberal boomer, whatever. Apparently, all of these things are like wildly controversial now. Pamela Adams, here's a good one, a Facebook, probably boomer. You make no sense. You're all over the place, all over. Of course, spelled wrong, because boomers who complain, they just have no spelling. They can't spell. You're so dumb. And it's like they're spelling every word wrong. It's like, did you not graduate second grade? You reek of misogyny. You're a racist, they say. You're sexist. You're xenophobic. Oh, you want to close the border. You're xenophobic. Oh, you think a man is a man and a woman's a woman? You're sexist. You're misogynistic. That's hate speech. That's anti-Semitism. That's climate denial. That's anti-vaxxerism if you don't get 3 mRNA shots. Okay, boomer. No one believes you except for the people that are as dumb as you. Yeah, it's misogyny. It's misogyny to say that men dominate NASCAR. It's misogyny to say that men dominate chess. It's misogyny to say that men dominate motorsports, that men dominate flying competitions, men dominate. They're better police officers. They make better military members. If it's a war that you're entering, but if it's a selfie stick competition for TikTok, then yeah, sure. Let's diversify a little bit. But if it's not, I don't want, I had one guy, I was at a concert one time. I think it was like Tommy Vexed and Struggle Jennings. Tommy asked me to perform and open for them when they came to Orange County, which was awesome. Shout out to Tommy and Struggle. They're both great guys and friends of mine. I performed, right? And I was backstage, and someone had fallen off a chair. They stood on a chair and they fell off and smashed their head like on the ground or on the chair. It was pretty brutal. It was bad. I see it happen, so I turn to the security guard or the emergency guy. It's this 400-pound Hispanic guy. God bless him, but he like couldn't get to the emergency spot because he was so fat. And I'm just giving context about him being Hispanic. It doesn't matter what race he are. He just happened to be Hispanic and he was fat. It's like he couldn't do anything. It's like he's there getting paid. Cool. An emergency happens. He's too obese to like get, like I was doing more than he was because it took him 20 times as much time as it took me to get there. Am I supposed to say that that makes a good security guard? No, a good security guard is jacked. And if there's a gun involved, someone who's a sharpshooter. It's like not some 80-year-old woman protecting a apartment complex. My friend's apartment complex, they used to have this one 80-year-old Mexican dude who'd watch telenovelas and literally fall asleep. He'd literally fall asleep watching telenovelas. It's like, dude, cars would get robbed at my friend's places all the time. It's like, of course, they got an 80-year-old grandpa watching soap operas in Espanol asleep. And then the other days they'd have an old woman. It's like, why even have security at that point? Is that misogynistic? Is that ageism? No, it's just like how the world works. If people don't care about anything, the quality of everything goes down. Like, let's just make the military, instead of strong, jacked guys who are sharpshooters, let's just make it a bunch of fat, weak people of all ethnicities and make it diverse so they take selfies and make TikTok viral videos. I guess if the military is just going to do propaganda, that's a good idea. But if we're actually supposed to fight a war or be prepared for something, probably not the right idea, folks. No, that's misogyny. It's ridiculous. People are so dumb. The boomers, even the Republican ones, they're all feminists. That's why they've lost this country. They're so far gone. Like they lost every sense of conservatism and like what the Bible says. They're like, who cares if woman does this or that? Well, the Bible cares. I mean, I know you don't care about the Bible, and most societies that you benefit off of did care about the Bible and made it the centerpiece of everything, including the interpretation of the U.S. Constitution and the type of people that it was going to serve. But you just let it go for Ozzy Osbourne and demonic rock and roll in the 70s. And, now you guys have it right because you guys progressed so much, right, guys? The progress is just wild. You guys just really showed that. No, you guys lost every ounce of logic, morality, basic human nature, science. You left it behind for, boomer rock and roll and these fake ideas of like Western whatever. And now the country's just falling apart. And it's like the left is insane. And all that boomers want to do, the same ones that destroyed the country, they just want to sit and watch Mark Levin talk about left wingers because it's palatable. It's like, yeah, the left wingers took it too far. Well, you also took it too far. So instead of correcting course and realizing what you did wrong, it's easier to just sit there and watch the television talk about the other side. And that's what left wingers do too. It's like the Democrat boomers, they don't want to self-reflect and realize that they ruined the country. They just want to sit and watch Rachel Maddow yell at Stephen Miller and like Steve Bannon for 5 years. Oh, the Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon. And oh my gosh, like Stephen Miller. Oh man, oh my gosh. It's like, that's what it is. It's like two delusional groups of people that just don't want to self-reflect and correct course. Someone said that's why men and women need each other too. Absolutely. And that's why marriage was between a man and a woman, because a man and a woman are different genders. They come together, they create a puzzle piece, they put their puzzle pieces in each other, and they create a child. And then it creates the perfect structure to raise a child, a man and a woman, the masculine and the feminine. All these new age spiritual hippie chicks, even though they're feminist, some of them, they're also like spiritual, where they're like, there's feminine energy, there's masculine energy. Even they know that there's a difference between male energy, masculine energy, feminine energy, female. They're different genders. One has a vagina, one has a penis. They stick their puzzle pieces in each other and create a kid. That's why marriage was between a man and a woman. It wasn't to be hateful. And it's like, but I like my gay neighbors. Cool, bro. That's awesome. Everybody knows somebody that they like. I'm not knocking people for this is not my job. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a sheriff in town. I'm just being honest. It's like there is a reason that things were the way they were. And now that they're not this way, it's like now we live in the world of where things are not this way. And this is what I want to say real quick too. And please let me know what you think about the Russian-Ukraine thing. If you're liberal, God bless you. You know what I'm saying? Awesome. But if you're a conservative and you're like, oh, Mark Levin and Russia and Ukraine, think about this. Russia rejects all the LGBTQ stuff that you complain about. Russia builds churches. Ukraine kicked out Catholics or I don't know what it was, the one Roman Catholic Church, or I don't even know. It's like they're persecuting them. But also they started pushing LGBTQ laws. Push it up. Look it up. Everywhere the West goes, I like our country. I love America. I'm a proud American. With that being said, I'm also an honest American. So it's like our country is getting destroyed from within. We're all complaining about it. And then our foreign policy goes overseas and spreads that infectious ideology to these countries. Like Ukraine is a Christian country. Ukraine is a Catholic country. We get there, Zelenskyy gets there, and all of a sudden they start passing these San Francisco LGBTQ laws. Look it up. And then Russia's going the other way. That's what our foreign policy is trying to do. It's just the Bolsheviks rebranding to both parties, and they're like, I'm liberal, I'm Republican, but we need to infiltrate Ukraine and make them gayer. And then it's like you go to Russia and they're like, nah, I don't want, millions of my people to get killed again like that happened in the 1900s. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's so hateful. Why won't he let in George Soros? Why won't he let in the NGOs? Why won't he let in foreign aid? Why won't he allow us to bankroll a politician to run against him and take over his country and kill his people again? I don't understand why he's so hateful. It's like, that's what we do around the world. We go to these countries, make them less Christian, push these San Francisco hate speech laws. That's what we're doing to Ukraine. Ukraine is significantly shifted since we've gotten intervened. And it's literally the opposite of conservatism. I bring this up all the time too, but before Charlie Kirk got a little bit better, he used to do the same thing with Israel and Palestine. He'd said, Israel has the biggest gay parades in the world, and Palestine doesn't like gay people. What's your job, Charlie Kirk, as a conservative? Are you supposed to go to Palestine and make them gay or something? Like, I get that you are perceiving that they're persecuting gay people too much and you don't like it. So you're a gay activist now, Charlie Kirk, the homosexual activist? Like, I don't get it. You complain about pride parades in America and they're sexualizing the kids, you say, yet you're bragging about them in Tel Aviv and you want to bring them to Palestine. Oh, that's how we beat the left. Oh, you don't even care. It's like, yeah, the left and the right, none of them care about anything because everybody's brainwashed. The left should care about pride parades in Palestine, but they don't because they're brainwashed. And also Republicans shouldn't want to bring them to Palestine, but they do because they're brainwashed. Both sides are brainwashed. Both sides are being mind controlled by the fake opposition. And nobody wants to admit it. It's so obvious. It's like, I don't like Russia. No offense, but God bless people in Ukraine and Russia, but I don't want to live in Russia. It's not a top 10 place I'd want to visit. I'm not Russian. I have no loyalty to Russia. I'm Polish. I'm Italian. I'm Czechoslovakian. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm American. That's how I was raised. But I'll call a spade a spade. Like, they want to infiltrate Russia. They want to overthrow a leader who likes them, and they want to replace them with a Bolshevik the same way they did in Ukraine. And as the West invades, it gets gayer and less Christian. And as the West invades, people start dying. It's not funny, but I'm just like, that's just what happens. It's like we invade, and it makes sense where it's like, why would you want to do that? Well, who's doing it? If you realize the people doing it don't have an attachment to either side and they don't mind if the sides kill each other, then it makes a lot more sense. Like, why would someone want to do this with this and this? Because they don't care about Ukrainians and they don't care about Russians. They have no loyalty to either party. And if they invade Ukraine, they can pervert it and destroy it. And then they can use the perverted and destroyed shell puppet country to try to push into the other ones. And I'll tell you right now, as Tom Cotton is, undermining the Trump administration and trying to sell his little China book, this is also, once again, I'm not into communism. I'm vehemently opposed to that as a political system, and I'm not Chinese, and I have zero loyalty to the Chinese people. With that being said, they're going for Russia and China because Russia and China are two countries that are massive that they have not completely infiltrated yet. China does not allow them to take over everything, and Russia does not allow them to take over everything. And that's what these people want to do. They want to take over everything. They want to infiltrate. It's like when you go to China, they have two versions of TikTok. One for the degenerate Americans, that's us. It's like, here, you look at all this weird stuff that's destroying your children's brains. In China, they don't allow that because they don't hate themselves. So they, and I'm not saying that all censorship is good or anything, but we have censorship in America. My American TikTok account got deleted. So people will sit here and say, oh, you're just pro censorship. I'm not. I've been censored by the American version of TikTok that was handed over to Oracle and Larry Ellison years ago by Donald Trump to some extent. But in general, it's like in the Chinese version, they don't let women like show off their bodies. They're not like, they don't want to promote, like, I don't know if whoredom is the right word, probably not, but that, like they don't want to promote that. They're pushing like sciences and the young men are strong. Like they're not pushing their kids to be trans. They're pushing their young men to work out and be good at sports. Like they have this sense of nationalism there where they're like, we want the men to be strong and smart. We want the women to be smart and modest. And in America, they push this version that's just 20 times more degenerate. And this idea, they'll say, oh, that's censorship in China. I got my TikTok deleted. I talked about the pharmaceutical industry. They deleted my account. Talk about foreign policy, delete my account. So we have censorship also. It's just when we tell the truth, we get censored. When they push degeneracy, they get censored. It's not justifying their system. I'm just saying, like, you think Tom Cotton gives a crap about making China free? No, they're trying to take over any country they don't control. They want to do what they did to Ukraine to China and Russia. Those are just bigger dogs. They need that. That's why the whole fight with Taiwan, it's like, that's a Hong Kong, Taiwan, these are countries close to there that America has a presence in that it wants to dominate, which as an American, I get it. I get the geopolitics of it, but we need to be better. And then our invasions, or at least I don't know, so I'd call it infiltration, but what we're doing would be more moral. Right now, we're infecting our own country and infecting other countries. So it's like, this is not coming from a praise of Russia or China, but it's like, we need to do the right thing here, and then we can export the right thing. If we're infecting our own people and then we infect Ukraine, like, why would we want to overthrow a leader? Like, Putin is popular in Russia. Like, people that don't even live there, like, we need an election. He'll win an election. A fair election, he'll win. A rigged election in his favor, he'll also win if that's what he's doing. But the only thing that the West wants is to get somebody that they're bankrolling to run against them. If they can't get the opposition, why would they care about an election there? People really don't know that. And the thing is this too, at a certain point, when you do like free commerce and free trade, the West invades. So by, like, as a reactionary and a like intelligent way to prevent for another country from taking over your country, a lot of countries around the world are getting more, I would say, you could call it what you want, authoritarian or whatever, but it's like, if you have a fork in the road, it's not justifying it. It's just the reality of the situation. I'm just analyzing it. You go this way and you open up everything, and then America takes over your country and destroys your people. Or you go this way and you crack down on a lot of things, but at the same time, things get better. Which way do you go? A good example of that that's more tolerable to my audience would be Bukele of El Salvador. They call him an authoritarian. They call him a dictator. Oh, this guy's, he's abusing his power. He's throwing too many people in jail. It went from the murder capital of the world to one of the safer places in the world. It's the greatest achievement in modern history from almost any president. I will go on the record to say that. A top 5 achievement of modern history is Bukele taking over El Salvador, the murder capital of the entire planet, and then making it into a place that's safer than American cities. It's one of the greatest modern leader achievements. He's one of the best leaders in the world. He's an authoritarian. You can call him what you want. He's not. But at the same time, it's like, he saw the problem. Either I sit on my hands and do nothing, or I fix the problem. He fixed the problem. It's the same thing with these other countries. It's like they're doing this, they're doing that. What do you want them to do? Let George Soros and his band of NGOs and other people, because George Soros is not the only one, left-wing NGOs, right-wing NGOs, Western aid fronts that are really just there to take over the country. Is that what they should do? Is that freedom? That's freedom and democracy, right? Letting the West completely take over your country, establish a puppet leader, destroy your country, suck out the morality in your country, and get people killed. Is that what they should do? Is that the moral answer? Yeah, that's free. This is the democracy they're selling us in this country and in every other country. Liberals are even now saying that they think this election was stolen. Like after ridiculing Republicans for 10 years, 5 years, 4 years, being like, the election can't be stolen. That's hate speech. That's insurrection. And I understand January 6th is different from just challenging the election. But in general, what I'm saying is now Democrats are like, I think the computers were rigged. Like they're just copy pasting what Republicans were saying, what they told you not to say. And now they have all these grandiose ideas. So it's really fascinating. I'm gonna read a few and I'm gonna keep this under an hour. Someone said Trump trying to be good. He's trying to do good work, but they're trying to stop him. And I don't care what people think. Mark Levin is fake opposition. I'm right. I don't care. I don't care how many boomers. Dude, you don't understand the great one. You're brainwashed. You've learned fake history. You've learned fake republicanism. You're feminist, getting mad when I post about the male-dominating sports. These people they've ruined the country, and they just sit there and they're like, dude, he's the great one. Great at subverting Republicans, sure. Great at subverting Americans into destroying themselves. Great at making Americans think perverting the world and pushing policy that destroys European countries is somehow good for you. It's not. And I'll even say this too, although I probably shouldn't, but I will because I believe it. If you look at what's going on in this country, because of so much fake opposition Republicans, like Republicans, especially over the age of 40, they're completely brainwashed on our foreign policy, completely, like irredeemable to the point where they're never going to learn. But they think they're fighting Hamas in Palestine, right? To some extent they are with their taxpayer dollars, sure. But they think that they're going to beat Palestine and then it's just going to be really good for America because Palestine's gone and they're the terrorists. And that even though when you look at any terrorist in the Middle East, like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, there's weird patterns about them that you notice. One being that we're funding rebels who work with them. The other being that ISIS, why don't you do your research and find out there's one country, at least not in the world, but there's a country in the Middle East that ISIS has never attacked. And when they did attack them, they apologized. Go figure out who that is. But anyway, and then there's also articles talking about Netanyahu at one point elevating Hamas because, that was his political strategy at the time. Once again, it's not hate speech, mainstream articles you can look up. And I'm not saying that he's working with them now, but there's documentation that he elevated them. But in general, if you look there, Republicans are being brainwashed to think, oh, when we defeat Palestine, there's going to be peace and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully, sure. I hope so. But America is getting Palestined. America has already been Palestined. They're just not dropping bombs on you. They're not bombing you like they're bombing the Palestinian women and children and people, not just the terrorists, but the innocent people who live there and who've lived there for over 100 years now. They're Palestining America. They're not doing it with bombs. They're doing it with credit card usury. They're doing it with Federal Reserve inflation. They're doing it with television propaganda. They're doing it with open borders. They're doing it with opioids and fentanyl. You're being Palestined. You just don't know it. You're just so brainwashed that you don't even know that you're being Palestined. It's not like, oh, we're going to beat them and then everything's... No, you're getting Palestined. They're killing you just with other things. And I'm not saying they're doing it necessarily. I'm just saying our country's being Palestined. Like opioids, fentanyl, subversive racial propaganda on every television station through every sports league. Who do you think's doing all of that? There's some new Jesus movie where some female black actress is playing her. I haven't even looked into it because at this point I don't even care. But I wonder who's producing that movie. I wonder who's producing that blasphemous movie about Jesus or whatever. It's like we're being destroyed. We're being destroyed from within. We're being destroyed from abroad. It's just Republicans are so brainwashed and brain tangled by fake opposition, 20 years of believing people that are destroying them, that they can't detach. It's like Stockholm syndrome, the same way the left wingers have it. Someone said I'm going a little off the deep end. I'm right. What do you think it is when they literally flood your country with migrants, open the borders, use all the television stations to tell you that you're going to be the minority soon and you have to like it or you're a racist, kill millions of your people with fentanyl and opioids, like literally just people are dropping dead, these companies. One of the companies gets caught in court and they found out that they knew that they were bad for people and they still were pushing them. This is all obvious research. What do you think this all is? You think this is for your best interest? You think this is so you could lose weight or have a little bit of a pain? You know, the pain goes away when you get your tonsils taken out or something, and they just give you pills for a few days. No, they're Palestining you. You're being Palestined through the drug market, through the media propaganda, through both parties, through inflation, through credit card usury loans. You're being robbed. You're being Palestined. You just don't even know it. Some people do, but some people don't. Mail Shark, he's talking about Mark Levin. Someone said they still want to be sending our taxpayer dollars to a sexual installed actors, America first. Yeah, it's like, I like Donald Trump, but I really support Ukraine. We know why you support Ukraine, because Ukraine is a plant Bolshevik puppet state that the West is using to destroy Europeans. Oh, there, I said it. Now what? I said it. That's what they're doing. They're destroying certain European countries with Western taxpayer dollars with a Bolshevik plant who doesn't care about Ukrainians or Russians, just like the Bolsheviks killed millions of people in the 1900s. Now they're doing it in a different form. Am I not supposed to notice this? Am I not supposed to read articles in history? Am I just supposed to listen to Sean Hannity to get my opinions? And the same thing they're doing over there, they're doing to us. And we're doing it to ourselves through these idiots that are completely compromised. And maybe they're compromised by money. Maybe they're just brainwashed like all the other Fox News boomers, because some people don't even realize that. They think like obviously politicians are taking money, but it's like, look at how many people's parents still believe Sean Hannity. It's like they're not getting paid to do it. They're just brainwashed. Not everybody's getting bribed. A lot of people are. And not everybody's getting blackmailed. And, I would say like blackmailed. I don't know what other word I was going to use. Some people are getting blackmailed, but some people are just dumb and mind controlled. It's like same with liberals. Every time there's like a liberal event, people will be like, George Soros is funding that. Not always. I mean, sometimes he funds certain things, yes, and it's transparent. But like people who just watch Fox News all day, they just say George Soros. Yeah, he's involved in a lot of stuff, absolutely. But once you brainwash a population, you don't have to do everything all the time. It'll be done by the people who are just so far gone. It's like Yuri Bezmenov said with the, what's it called? The demoralization and the destabilization and to destroy a nation. You destroy the minds of the masses and then you just go away and they destroy themselves. Yeah, you could bankroll this and that here or there, but it's like everything is not being bankrolled right now. It's just you got brainwashed people doing things that people that don't have control over their own brain have. Someone mentioned Lex Friedman. While he's brought up, there's a clip going viral of Tim Dillon talking about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and saying that they had ties to Mossad. That's what Tim Dillon was saying, right? And according to this viral clip, Lex Friedman's response was, I just think Jeffrey Epstein was an individual. He said that when he talked to Ye too. Ye said, I noticed all these groups. And he goes, no, there's no groups. There's no organization. It's just individuals. Okay, you can get away with saying that to Ye because people will believe that. But when you say it about Epstein, and maybe Lex Friedman's right. Maybe Lex Friedman is right. And maybe people really are this stupid. It's possible because, these people have millions of followers. But it's like, are people that stupid to think that Jeffrey Epstein was just some radical lone wolf? Oh, he's just an individual. He totally has no connection to any government. It's just an individual who was just doing things. Like, is anybody that dumb? Nobody's that dumb, but they'll watch something like that and be like, oh, I still believe him. I've listened to him for 10 years. It's like, really? Like that, Yeah, he's just one guy with, it's just, I'm sure it's just anti-Semitism and hate speech to say that, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein worked with anybody, right? Because they just so happen to be that ethnicity too. But it's just hate speech because, they're just two random individuals that have no connections to any group and ever. Right. It's just laughable. But when you talk about this sort of stuff too, whether it be black or Jewish or white or Asian or Christian or Muslim, in my opinion, some people are actually doing too much and being nasty about it, right? On all sides, there's a lot of nastiness going on, and I don't like it. With that being said, there's a difference between, oh, you're being hateful, which everyone, if you talk about race, they just say you're being hateful. If you talk about religion, they just say you're being hateful. There's also differences between races and religions and different ideologies. So if you want to understand motive, you need to understand race and religion. Like in South Africa, race is playing a huge role in certain political parties. And they're talking about white farmers and the history of, apartheid, et cetera. So it doesn't make you a racist to notice that. It's like you can't understand South African history or the South African present without bringing race into the equation. Doesn't make you a racist. It's just that's literally what's happening. You can't possibly analyze it without talking about race. When it comes to the Middle East, you can't possibly analyze the Middle East without talking about religion. Some people talk about Islam. Have you ever heard me call someone an Islamophobe? Never, not once. Why? Because it's a made-up word that just suggests you're scared of Islam if you talk about it. You might not be scared of it. You might just be talking about it. And the difference between Islam and Christianity or Islam and Judaism doesn't necessarily mean you're hateful talking about the differences between two religions. If you could talk about white, if you could talk about black, if you could talk about South African, if you could talk about Islam, how come you can't talk about Judaism or Jewish ethnicity? Nobody wants to talk about that because when it comes to that, it's just an individual and it's just a thought and you're just an anti-Semite. Maybe you are, I guess, if you're a dickhead and maybe you're just a bad person or maybe you're mean, but also like maybe there are some things going on. Like, is it hateful to say that Israel has a certain ideology? They have certain rules. A Christian soldier wanted to put a cross on his gravestone and they wouldn't allow him. Why? Because they're Jewish. And, Israel, the religion of Israel is Judaism. And they're so strong about that they don't like Christians the same way a lot of these Christians like them. They just don't, they're like, no, that wouldn't be able to happen in America. But over there, they're totally fine with it because they have a religion and an ethnic group that they care about more than yours. Sorry. But you're not allowed to talk about it because that makes you hateful. It's the same thing with, certain rules they have with citizenship. How do you get a citizenship in Israel? There's a birthright. You can get a free trip and a citizenship for being ethnically Jewish. Okay, I'm not opposed to that. It makes sense. Like they want, but how many people from that country and of that ethnicity are writing in the United States press telling people of my ethnicity that you're not allowed to think that way and that makes you a racist. And if you think that way, it makes you a supremacist and a hater. But you can have a country where you fly people out based on their ethnicity and give them a citizenship. But in America, we have to take in people from 50 different countries or else we're a racist. We have to take in the refugees from the war that we funded for your country. Yeah, that's an op-ed in Wall Street Journal from the Likud party. They wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and said, America and Europe should take these refugees. You took the other ones. Why not take these ones? That's an op-ed. Go look it up. Wall Street Journal, American right-wing press written by a foreign country saying, you guys take in the refugees. You stupid Trump supporters. Not literally saying that, but you dumb Republicans. You take them in. You're our greatest ally. Okay, then take in all our refugees since we're so great. I'm sorry. It's like there's things happening for certain reasons, and you're not supposed to talk about them, and you're not allowed to talk about them. Like, why was Trotsky in New York City? Which publication? I just showed people. Which publications were pushing Leon Trotsky? Which ones? Can you say it? A Jewish socialist publication. That's what the Times of Israel said. But if I say it, it makes me an anti-Semite. But when the Times of Israel says it, it's just journalism saying that Trotsky flew to the United States, went to New York, was well loved by the Jewish community there because they were pushing socialism in America and had a press rivaling the New York Times. And then he flew back, and it helped inspire him kill millions of people in the Bolshevik Revolution. But you're not going to learn this on Fox News. You can't. They won't allow you. It's not real opposition. They're not going to tell you this on television. They're not going to tell you this on most podcasts, to be honest, because it's not an easy thing to talk about. But it's right there waiting for you to learn. And why does that matter? I don't know. When Christians and Muslims fight historically, and why does it matter? Because I don't know, because they're different. Why, when Christians and Muslims fight in Nigeria, why does it matter? Apparently it matters to these people because they keep fighting all the time, because there's differences in ethnicity and religion. And sometimes people have different ideologies and different belief systems, and it causes them to fight or conquer or, start a war. That's just human history. Like there's nothing hateful about noticing. But the problem is they want you to just say, well, socialism, 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 the left, the left, the left. Yes, the left, socialism, left wing. Yes, correct. What else is it though? Everybody who talks about socialism and makes documentaries, all these documentarians, they don't want to mention this. They don't want to talk about this. They'll do a documentary about socialism, and they won't even mention this angle of it, because this angle of it will get them blacklisted in the Republican community. But it's real history. And it's such real history that even publications overseas are writing articles about it. Like, it's all obvious. And the reason I brought it up today is because if you want to talk about our history in America is a British Revolution. Our history is the Second Amendment and the First Amendment and the Founding Fathers and the Native Americans and the Black people who were here and the Civil War and slavery. And, that's our history. In America, we have a very fascinating and complex history that involves multiple groups in this country. When you go over to Russia, if you care to study history, just like you can't talk about American history without talking about this and talking about that and talking about this, because it's all real, you can't talk about Russian history without the bullshit. Hold on. Sorry about that. If you're going to sit there and say, why don't they want to replace Putin? With who? With you want the people that planted a Bolshevik plant in Ukraine? With the West, the same country that inspired the Bolshevik Revolution, that killed millions of their people, everyone besides America, that's what we're doing in Ukraine. So why would Russian people want that again? Why would Russian people want a Zelenskyy to fight them until they put a Zelenskyy in charge over Putin? Why would they want it? Why would they want that? Who wants that? People that are brainwashed by Western press, people that listen to Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and these right-wingers who are pushing the Ukraine angle. It's so obvious. And then people go, you should really listen to him. He got the vaccine. Oh, he's so much smarter than you. That's what you think. You think he's so much smarter because he's been sold to you as this guru when he's really just fake opposition, coaxing you into another war to try to push a country back into a Bolshevik revolution. You just haven't figured it out. Nobody that got the vaccine and regrets it now, oh, I can't believe I got it. You're not better than me. You're not smarter than me. Like, if you couldn't figure that out, that's like an IQ test right there. You couldn't figure it out. Compare my journalism during COVID to Mark Levin's journalism. Compare my journalism, by the way, with no team, with no makeup artist, with no editing team, with none of that. Compare it to Sean Hannity. Compare it to Mark Levin. Compare it even to Tucker Carlson in some cases. Compare it to anybody. Incredibly not humbly, because I could just pretend like I'm being humble right now, but I'm not. So I'm not going to be like these people, they win a Super Bowl and they're like, I'm so humbled by winning the Super Bowl. How are you humbled by winning the Super Bowl? There's nothing humble about being the best athlete in the world. Humbling is when you fall down the stairs and hurt yourself the next day. That's humbling. Oh, I won the Super Bowl, but I'm still depressed. Or I won the Super Bowl and I still have bad days. That's what humbling is. It's not humbling to like, I just won the MVP. It just humbles me. No, humbling is when it falls off your shelf and cracks and you're like, damn it, That's humbling. That whole rant was to say what I'm going to say is not humble. I think I did some of the best, if not the best, journalism during COVID. If the Pulitzer Prize was actually fair, I think I deserve it. I think I did the best journalism at that time. And all the people who got the Pulitzer Prize were subversive propagandists who literally lied to the world. So it's like, I don't look at people who lied to you during COVID. I don't look at people who got tricked. I don't look at people who got the vaccine. These are not my superior idols. These are idiots. These are puppets. These are either inferior journalists or just people that are regime liars pretending to be, you know, Trump supporters. Like, this is not, this people can think what they want, but that's what I think. Someone says sometimes righteous indignation is necessary. I don't know what's necessary. I'm just saying it. There's times where I've done work that's subpar, but during COVID, I did the best. I deserve a Pulitzer. And these people that lie us into war after war, they're not better than me. Oh, but you don't understand him. Yeah, he's a good lawyer and he understands constitutional law. That's great. But like Ben Shapiro talks really fast. So people that are not that smart think that Ben Shapiro's smart. But in reality, Ben Shapiro, look at his reporting during COVID. He's crying about Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan's so anti-Semitic. Oh my gosh, he's telling people about Bill Gates. Oh my gosh, he doesn't want black people to get the vaccine. Why does Ben Shapiro want black people to get the vaccine so bad? You know, yeah, he just really cared so much about it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Louis Farrakhan. Oh my gosh, anti-Semites. And then the people who listen to him are like, oh, Louis Farrakhan, the anti-Semite, we can't listen to him. It's like, I don't care who you listen to, but Ben Shapiro did some of the most egregious, pathetic, and subversive reporting during COVID. And then he comes out in this little Oshkosh Bagosh fake NASCAR jacket, and he's like, oh my gosh, I got lied to. I got lied to by the government. I got lied to by Pfizer. I got lied to. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean, they tricked me. I mean, who would have known that Pfizer would ever trick me? I mean, dude, it's not my fault. I mean, guys, come on. I mean, I'm really, really smart. I'm smarter than Anomaly. Trust me. I mean, I talk fast. I want to get us into wars. I mean, come on. I'm really smart. I mean, obviously, I'm smarter than Anomaly. He has long hair and he looks like a surfer. I mean, I'm an intellectual. I mean, I'm Ben Shapiro. I mean, come on. I'm a genius. Come on. I mean, yeah, I got all of COVID wrong, but you have to understand, I didn't get it wrong. The government got it wrong, and I believe the government. I mean, it's not my fault for believing the government. Who doesn't believe Pfizer and the government? Anybody with a brain, a computer, and 2 years of experience in journalism could know that Pfizer is not to be trusted and the government's not to be trusted, especially with the pharmaceutical industry. So people that are dumb are like, oh, Anomaly, he just made a mistake. By trusting the government and Pfizer and then taking no accountability, saying it's not his fault because basically he got tricked by the government. Oh, sorry, guys, I just started 15 wars and injected myself 50 times. It's not my fault. I thought that Pfizer was really telling the truth this time. I mean, you know, they only have a massive lawsuit where it was one of the biggest lawsuits in history that they had to pay out knowingly lying about a drug. And, you know, the Sackler family just, you know, destroyed the country with opioids and admitted that, you know, in court, it came out that they actually knew that they were bad and they covered it up. But, you know, these are really trustworthy people here. I mean, you know, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act and the PrEP Act and the history of chronic illness and the fact that everybody's obese and on pharmaceuticals now. I mean, this just reeks confidence. So, you know, when I watch Travis Kelce do a Pfizer commercial, I'm just like, yeah, that's what I trust. A strong athlete injecting himself with a product that the government bankrolled or essentially bought by the hundreds of millions. They'll tell me the truth about this. But I'm the bad guy, right? I'm the bad guy because it's like, I know that these people are not good at their jobs, but they're so good. You don't understand. They just had Tom Cotton on yesterday. The Tom Cotton that is currently undermining Donald Trump, the guy you like Donald Trump, and Tom Cotton's trying to stop his America First choices. And he's getting paraded around Fox News selling his China book. Of course he is, because that's how easy it is to trick a Republican. You're like, the left sucks in China, and they're like, oh my gosh, when are you speaking a turning point? Oh my gosh, you're really smart. It's like, that's literally all you have to do to trick a Republican. You literally just have to do, the left is bad. Just go look at ChatGPT, Vivek GPT Aswami. You know, it's like his Twitter account. He's like, I'm at a NASCAR event patriotism, beers, and hot dogs. I'm just like you. I'm wearing a Confederate jean jacket or whatever you wear. America, there's only two genders, folks. It's like these people, it's like that's all you have to say. You're like, China bad and two genders good. Oh my gosh, dude, I just saw him on Jesse Waters. I mean, he really crushed. I mean, he talked about China for 10 years. George Soros also complains about China. Do you like George Soros? Go Google the article that George Soros wrote in the Wall Street Journal about China and Xi Jinping saying he's the biggest enemy to open societies. And then go look at the tweet from Vivek Ramaswamy in 2022, where Vivek is praising George Soros on his op-ed about China. Wow. All it takes is criticizing China. I guess you guys love George Soros then, because he has the exact same idea about China as Vivek does and Tom Cotton does. Isn't that just fascinating? And that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong that you have to play opposite day with George Soros. It's just like, have you ever seen a Republican retweet a George Soros op-ed and be like, "That, yeah, way to go, George Soros. This is the way we fight the enemies of open societies." What do you mean by open society? I like closed border nations, not open societies. What do you mean by that? Open every country so no country has any diversity and every country's destroyed? True diversity is when a nation closes its borders, allows people to visit and go on vacation, and maintains an identity that is indistinguishable from the rest of the world. Diversity is not when you flood every European country with migrants and then tell them it's diversity. Meanwhile, Africa's not getting more diverse. China's not getting more diverse. Israel's certainly not getting more diverse. Yet just Europe has to just, destroy itself. And, that's the only way you could beat the deep state or something. It's like, sure. I'll read one or two more. Someone said, I completely understand your frustration. Slightly frustrated, but also I don't really care. I'm not really going to break a sweat over this today. I'm just being honest. It's the frustrating part is when so many people don't understand, but that's just the way the world is. I can't make people understand. I'm a lot less frustrated than I used to be. I'm not stressing over it at all. And although it's always better when people agree with you, obviously that's more fun. I can't say I really care that much. I'm disappointed constantly in people, but at the same time, the tides are turning. I'm not really that concerned with it, but yeah, I'm just passionate and I try to be entertaining. Someone said, one thing for certain, you're not brainwashed. I love that. You analyze everything. I'm going to use this as a quick example because it's the truth. I got COVID almost 100% right, and some people got it over 50% wrong. Some of the best journalists on the right got it wrong. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't a mistake. I'm not only am I smart, but I'm analyzing everything. I'm a very honest person. So if something's not adding up, I don't care if Trump said it. I don't care if Ben Shapiro said it or Mark Levin said it or Nancy Pelosi said it. It's not about what other people are telling me. An intelligent person gets to the bottom of things on their own. A stupid person outsources their ideas to Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, or Donald Trump, or Rachel Maddow, or Ben Shapiro. 90% of the Republican base, I'm not trying to be mean, but 90% of the Republican base, they don't know anything. They've never read anything. If they're reading a book, it's a book that someone else wrote about someone else's book. They don't know anything. They export their beliefs to Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, so they think they know everything because they're listening to people they perceive as smart or that are smart telling them other things. A true intellect will get to the bottom of it on their own. So when it came to the pharmaceutical industry, Ben Shapiro said this, Trump said this, Bobby Kennedy said this person said this, Dr. Shiva said this. There's all sorts of people saying everything. An intelligent person will listen and come to better conclusions than someone they're listening to on TV. And that's what I did, where it's like I knew all these things because I had researched about the pharmaceutical industry. I knew about pharmaceutical corruption. I knew about the liability shields. I've listened to Bobby Kennedy. I listened to other people similar. And I'm like, that makes sense. And then you listen to Ben Shapiro talk about vaccines. He was, before COVID in January of 2020, he was advocating for mandatory vaccinations. People don't know this because he didn't do that. To Ben Shapiro's credit, he didn't do that during COVID. He was pushing against mandatory vaccinations. And I respect him for that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ben Shapiro. With that being said, people don't know this. There's a video up in January 2020 2 months before the pandemic, where a lady called in about vaccine mandates, and Ben Shapiro advocated for vaccine mandates. He said, if you don't get your kids vaccinated, they shouldn't be allowed to go to school because it's like, it's like pouring toxic sludge into a river that goes to other people. That's not your libertarian freedom to pollute the rest of the kids in school. They need a vaccine. He's totally fine with vaccine mandates. Go find that video. It's still on YouTube. It's good. And whoever the lady who called in, she knew all of her stuff. So it's like this knowledge was out there for everybody. But if you just listen to Trump, you're just hoping that he's doing the right thing, or you're just imagining a world like you don't know about the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. You don't know about the PrEP Act. You don't know about the history of Pfizer and all these things. Like if you know about that, Trump can't trick you. Ben Shapiro can't trick you. Mark Levin can't give you bad advice. Dan Bongino, he got the vaccine and said it was the worst decision he ever made. Do you know why Dan Bongino said he got the vaccine? Have you ever listened to Dan Bongino explain why he got the vaccine? His logic, no offense, is like 70 IQ logic. And I feel bad for people who listen to him and export their intelligence from a guy that simple-minded. But God bless Dan Bongino. He's a patriot. I'm just saying, he said, I got the vaccine because Trump put out the vaccine and China, the virus came from China. So I just figured like America, Trump, the American vaccine will beat the Chinese virus. And I trusted our country more than China. Dude, that's like Neanderthal level thinking compared to my analysis. I'm not trying to make fun of the guy, but it's like these people probably can't stand me because of what I'm saying now. But I'm also superior to them in reporting and the information I'm putting out and the way that I'm thinking. And I'm not saying that to be rude. It's just the truth. I don't think like a Neanderthal. Let me inject myself with an American vaccine so I could beat a Chinese virus. I mean, you might as well at that point be like a caveman. Like that's how I look at him. No offense. He's really a patriot. He's right about a lot of things, but it's like caveman analysis for dumb people. It's better than Rachel Maddow for sure. And he's definitely right about some stuff and has good instinct, but it's like, it's the most simplistic, like it's an insult. Listening to people like that is an insult to my intelligence. I'm too smart for that. It makes me dumber. And I'm not saying this to be rude, but it's like, these are the type of people that people think are smart. It's like, you're listening to a guy who made it the biggest mistake of his life, injecting himself with a COVID vaccine because he thought America beats China. Do you know how much dumber that is than getting into the history of Pfizer, the pharmaceutical lobby, the warp speed of how it worked, the liability shields that they have, the history they had of lying and covering stuff up and corruption? Like that's a smart analysis of like, I'm not telling people what to do, but I'm intaking all this information. And this is the baseline of how I'm going to make my decisions. I have all this information. Now I'm going to make a smart decision. I took in the information. I gave people the information. And then I didn't get the vaccine because I had the information. When you have the information of Dan Bongino, that's how you think. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't have all the information. It's the same with all of these people. So that's all I'm trying to say is like, if you listen to a lot of these, like you're listening to their logic and they make it sound smart, but to a smart person, it sounds dumb. Like I would be willing to debate any of these people on Ukraine and Russia. And, there's valid point. Like I understand why America would want to fund Ukraine. I understand why America would want to fight Russia. There's economic reasons. There's geopolitical reasons. I know what they know. Like I get their angle of it, but what they're not telling you is the angle that I just told you today about what happened in the Bolshevik Revolution. About like if people are not willing to at least tell you what, RFK is willing to tell you, or Dave Smith or Tucker Carlson for that matter, they're not giving you the full story. If you get the full story and say, I want to bankroll Ukraine and Russia or bankroll Ukraine to fight Russia, sure, you can come to that conclusion, especially if you're Ukrainian and you have loyalty to Ukraine. But the reason that these people don't give you that information is because if you got that information, you would make a decision that went against the decision they're telling you to make. Like this is not even really that controversial. The 2014 revolution in Ukraine was Western funded and their way of infiltrating Ukraine even further. Zelenskyy is the most obvious, most fantastical puppet in modern history. I mean, like I said, it should be a movie how he got into office by portraying the president on television and tricking Ukrainians into voting for him. by being a you think this all just spontaneously happened through democracy, that Kvartal 95 just happened to work with Kolomoisky, who just happened to put on a television show that just so happened to have, Zelensky as the president of Ukraine, that just so happened to be the most popular show on TV, that just so happened to, put his hat in the race for president. And then his production studio just so happened to also double as a political studio. And a lot of the same producers and people in the studio ended up working in his administration. I mean, that would be like NBC bankrolling Rachel Maddow, putting Rachel Maddow on television as the president of the United States for 5 seasons. Then Rachel Maddow wins president, and then NBC becomes her political party. And then most of her cabinet members, or a good portion of them, are from the media corporation that bankrolled her to the presidency. It's one of the greatest stories in modern history, Zelensky's rise to power. It's fascinating. Do they tell you that on Fox News? Do they tell you about the 2014 revolution? Do they tell you that ethnic Russians and Ukrainians, for that matter, have been slaughtered, whether it be the Holodomor or the Bolshevik Revolution? Of course not, because if they told you about those, like really told you about those and really told you who did it, you would have a totally different worldview. You would not be wanting to watch them or think what they think or do what they do. So they don't tell you these things because it's like they just say it's hate speech or it's just someone being hateful. It's like, yeah, you can't talk about Ukraine and Russia without talking about race. And if you could talk about Ukrainians and Russians and the different ethnic groups in that region, why can't you talk about the people who were the Bolsheviks? Why can't you talk about the people who did the Holodomor? Why can't you talk about Trotsky and Stalin and Marx and the fact that they flew to New York City and got press from a certain ethnic group that was pushing socialism in America? How come you can't talk about that? You can talk about everything else, but you can't talk about that. They don't want you to talk about that, and they don't want you to know that, because once you know that, then nothing they say makes sense. Their entire shtick of like, we just care about democracy. Then call for an election in Ukraine and Russia. Russia's probably had an election more recent than Ukraine. I'm not sure off the top, but I would guess that they had an election in Russia faster than they've had one in Ukraine. Zelensky's holding out on elections. Let's come to the table and say, we care about democracy. You have an election and you have an election. They don't care about the election in Ukraine. They don't want an election in Ukraine because they have their puppet in Ukraine. The Bolshevik Western plant is leading Ukraine. Why would you have an election and risk losing the country back to the Ukrainians or back to people that are sympathetic towards Russia? No. So here's what I'm trying to say is when they say, well, is Putin going to have a real election in Russia? Do you care about real elections in Russia? Do you really care? If you care about real elections in Russia, why don't you care about real elections in Ukraine? You care about both? Okay, let's go back to Russia. Let's be honest. Do you want a real fair election, or do you want a Western democracy election in which foreign countries bankroll the opposition president and try to take over the country? Which one do you think Mark Levin wants? Which one do you think Adam Kinzinger wants? Which one do you think Lindsey Graham wants? Which one do you think, these people want? Come on. It's obvious. They don't you think they'd be totally happy with 100% fair election where the Russians decide their outcome. No, because the Russians are going to choose Putin. They want to bankroll the other side. These are people that have established puppet politicians over the course of the last 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years when it comes to the U.S. foreign policy and the people controlling it. They've overthrown dozens of countries. So bring in all that, just like with COVID, bring in all the information. They've overthrown dozens of countries. That's all they do. Lindsey Graham, Adam Kinzinger, the people that they work for, and the people that they worked for, and that 50, 60, 70 years of foreign policy. They've been overthrowing countries by the dozens. But you think in Russia, they don't want to do that? They just want a fair election? If you believe that, you're an idiot. But the thing is, people aren't thinking. They're exporting their thoughts to people that they consider experts, the same way that the left does. The left says, oh, they're experts. They're experts at what? They're experts at taking money from the pharmaceutical industry. They're experts at working for the government and then going to the Pfizer editorial board or the Pfizer board of advisors. They're experts at selling our country out. They're experts at doing backdoor deals. They're experts at covering up data trials that don't benefit them. They're experts at covering up side effects. They're experts at lobbying politicians to get rid of liability shield, or to give them liability shields so they don't have liability for that stuff. Yeah, they're experts, all right. They're just not experts at the truth, and they're not experts at science. They're experts at perverted science that has become politics. What do you think these Fox News hosts are? What do you think these mainstream Republicans are? You think they're experts at foreign policy? No, they're experts at telling you one side of the equation so that you support the war they want you to support. They're not going to tell you in a foreign country that the leader that you're worshiping actually funded the opposition at one point and elevated the opposition, because you're watching a movie when you watch Fox News. It's the good guys versus the bad guys. We're beating up the terrorists. If you open a real history book and you do 20 minutes of research outside of the propaganda on Fox News, you'll find out two things. In the Middle East, we've funded terrorists. They've admitted to funding terrorists, and often they fund the terrorists to overthrow a country, and then the terrorists become an issue. In other cases, you could find out who the terrorists are in attacking. If these are terrorists that hate everybody, why are they apologizing for attacking a country? Why are they apologizing for attacking one country? It's so obvious. Like, it's so obvious, it's laughable. But it's only not obvious when people are so addicted to someone that they consider an expert. I've been watching Sean Hannity for 10 years. I've been listening to the Ben Shapiro report. Then you probably never heard anything that I've said today, because the entire apparatus is to prevent you from knowing any of these things. I believe Israel has a right to do whatever it wants ethnically and do whatever it wants with its country. And to be quite frank, when it comes to Israeli elections, I don't care what they do. If Netanyahu has an election, cool. If he stays there for 20 years, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to sit and pretend like I care about every other country. I'm focused on my country. If Israel wants a dictatorship, that's for them and their people to decide. If Ukraine wants Zelenskyy, I just don't feel like bankrolling it the whole time and $250 billion going to a war. But if they do it on their own, that's up to them. If Russians want Putin, that's cool. If they don't, that's fine. If France wants Macron, that's on them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have my opinions, but it's not my country. I'm not running around the world telling people what to do, because in my country, I feel like the media is working against me. I know that the mainstream media is working against me. I know that most of the independent media is working against me. And I know that most of the fake Republican plant media is absolutely working against me. So I know that both politicians are being manipulated. I know that our own industries are pushing anti-human propaganda. I know that the sports leagues are controlled by a certain group of people that is just definitely not happening, unless you just notice that it absolutely is, that are pushing racial perversion. And here's the thing. When you get to the ethnicities of who's pushing the racial perversion and why, it starts to seem very hateful, because the truth is hate speech according to people who hate the truth. For example, I've mentioned this many times, but this is very documented. You'll talk about Black Lives Matter. The NAACP for this fact is exactly the same. They're the exact same type of organization that's been around for a while. But with Black Lives Matter, it's like people will look at the lesbian women who run Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors, this and that. Who recruited Patrisse Cullors? Who organized Patrisse Cullors? Who inspired Patrisse Cullors? Which book did Patrisse Cullors say is like Mao's little red book, that she was inspired by, that she was giving away on college campuses or selling them? Whose book was it? It was a guy named Eric Mann. Who is Eric Mann? A left-wing Jewish guy who has explained in interviews that he was born and his mom told him about the world made up of Goyim trying to attack him. So a lot of what he's doing is racially motivated. It's just Jewish, racially motivated against other ethnic groups, or using other ethnic groups in that pursuit. I'm not trying to be hateful. This is just the truth. If my race can hate his race, how come I can't say his race hates my race? If black people and white people, no, white people can only hate black people, but black people can't hate white people, right? That's what they tell you. It's like, it only goes one way. You're wrong. They can never be wrong. It's the same thing with Jewish. I'm just being honest. And it's like a lot of these black organizations, it's not hate speech to say that they were organized and manipulated by people with a certain racial outlook of the world. That's the reality of the situation. It's the same thing with Trotsky. When he went to New York City and met with a bunch of socialist publications of his ethnicity, they were enthralled with anti-Semitism. And what is anti-Semitism? What they would perceive as the hate of their ethnic group. Okay, fair. But how could you say that something's not racially or ethnically motivated when they're admitting that the big inspiration to the Bolshevik Revolution and to the overthrow of the Russian Tsar has to do with their ethnicity and them being perceived as this and that? You can't talk about it. Why? Because it's happening literally everywhere. You look at Adam Silver, who runs the NBA. Adam Silver, what can you say about the guy besides he looks like a creepier version of Mayorkas at the border. But in general, it's like he's pushing all this backwards BLM style propaganda in the NBA. Maybe it's just totally random. Maybe it's just him just being totally liberal. Sure, absolutely. But what if it's similar to Eric Mann? What if it's similar to the ideology of Leon Trotsky? It might not be, but it's not hate speech to speculate that it might be. Because if you look anywhere, you notice this pattern every single time or most of the time. And everybody says that, but it's known as hate speech when you say it. It's like, oh, there's an industry just completely destroying biblical values. Oh, let's look up this guy's Wikipedia. Oh, what do you know? He says he's trying to defile Europeans and Christians. But am I allowed to talk about it? No, that's not allowed. Okay. All right. Well, there's this new movie that's defiling Christians. Oh, I wonder who produced it. Oh, not supposed to notice that. Oh my gosh. It's like, okay, but why is there a group that polices basically conversations about one thing, but when it comes to my religion and my ethnicity, we're just supposed to sit here and be like, you know what? Let's just ruin everything that we've ever owned. Let's just make every Christian country a atheist, liberal country. Let's just, make Europe a place that doesn't look like Europe. Let's make Ireland look like the Middle East. Let's make London look like a country somewhere else. Let's make Germany look different. Let's just make all of Europe just completely change. And then, we'll go into Ukraine and then we'll fund them. And then, we'll push liberalism onto them and we'll try to push it onto Russia and make sure that Eastern Europe is destroyed. Let's do that. Okay, let's look around the world. Is everyone else doing this? Is China doing that? Oh, no, they're not. Wait, is Japan doing that? No. Is Africa doing that? No. Is Israel doing that? No. But they want us to do it, but they don't want to do it. Okay, so am I wrong to feel like we're being a little bit bamboozled here, where it's like these values that how come other countries don't want an open border? Because an open border would destroy their country. They can't afford an open border, but ours just has to be open. Who's bankrolling this stuff? I'm not saying it's the only thing, but Marjorie Taylor Greene went up on stage and she started talking about, I think it was called HAIS. Let me look it up. HAIS immigration. And she was saying that, Marjorie was saying on the television that HAIS, this liberal immigrant, helping agency or whatever, or organization, is working with Mayorkas, or Mayorkas is working with them to flood our country with illegal immigrants, right? Have you ever looked up what HIAS is? HIAS, I'm just on their Wikipedia now. HIAS is Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. It's a Jewish American nonprofit organization that provides humanitarian aid and assistance to refugees. It was established in 1881, originally to help a large number of Russian Jewish immigrants to the United States who had left Europe to escape anti-Semitic persecution and violence. And since then, they've been flooding our country with immigrants. Mayorkas, according to Marjorie and anybody who does research, at one point was working with them, and she claims that he was still working with them somehow, directly or indirectly, during his administration. Have you ever listened to Mayorkas talk? One time someone questioned him on something. I think they accused him of saying like anti-Semitism or something. I don't even know. And he went on this huge rant of how dare them say that because he's Jewish and his parents had fled persecution. So I'm not trying to be rude, and I don't know if you're supposed to say this, but what if he was Chinese, working with a Chinese organization to flood America with refugees? Would you call it anti-Chinetic to say that he was collaborating with an organization of his ethnicity? Would it be anti-Chinetic to talk about it or notice that? What if, he was Islamic or Saudi Arabian and he was working with a Saudi Arabian or Islamic refugee society to flood our country with refugees? Would you say it's Islamophobia to point that out? No, every right-wing publication would point that out. Why does no right-wing publication point that out with HAIS? Why are they all afraid to say it? Because that's what the Republican Party is. They don't do that. If everybody doing what he's doing, from BLM to running the sports leagues and pushing, liberalism to all this stuff, if they were all, and I'm just being honest, I'm not trying to be rude or hateful, I'm just being honest. If they were all Chinese and working with Chinese organizations, every Republican would be screaming about it on Fox News every single day. It would be the scandal of the century. It would be the scandal of our generation. It would be like, yo, our country's being infiltrated by China. Our country's being like that. Okay. Would I call that anti-Chinese? No. Would some people be offended? Sure. Would some people call it racism and stop Asian hate? Absolutely. But right-wingers would still do it. But when it's something else, you're just not supposed to talk about it. And then you got people on the right that are promoting Ukraine to Americans from a conservative perspective. I believe Zelensky's a Bolshevik. I believe he's an extension of exactly what's going on and what did go on. Others don't think that, but it is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comment section. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless America. God bless the world. And in my opinion, while, I'm just going to be real with you guys. If you're trying to make it in Republican politics, what I just told you today will end your career. Like, you have no chance of running for office. If I ever tried to run for office, you would think they were nice to Donald Trump compared to what they would probably try to do. Republican media, I would never be able to work at places like Daily Wire. I would never be able. I mean, look what they did to Candace Owens. Look what they did to Tucker Carlson at Fox News. I'm pretty much never going to be able to work at any other media company. I don't really care. I'm just letting you know, like, why other people don't do it. Some people are in on it. Some people have ethnic or religious bias. Some people are brainwashed. Some people mean well. Some people just don't agree, and they have valid reasons. But that's a small amount of people, I would think. But for the most part, do you know how many people watch what I'm doing, listen to what I'm doing, probably tell their friends about it behind the scenes, and people besides me, because I'm not that important on a scale of like this sort of conversation. There's a lot of people who say way crazier stuff and way more often. But in general, it's like they'll lose everything. If you depend on the Republican media and political sphere for a living, your living is done at that point. Like, you're not going to be able to make money in this world. In order to make money in this world, you can't mention what I mentioned today. They won't say I'm wrong. They'll just say it's hateful, even though I'm not hateful. I don't hate anybody. I would allow any country to do what they wanted to do in their country. In my country, I'm just noticing certain things. And when it comes to other ethnicities, they're allowed to like themselves, and they're allowed to want to have a certain country that makes sense to their ethics and values, and in some cases ethnic group. That's what Israel is. That's what Russia is. That's what like every country in the world is. America, it's a little more experimental, but it wasn't always. I mean, it was an experiment, but it was an experiment from certain parts of the world until the Hart-Celler Act. Look that up. But besides that, it's like, I don't care. And I've told people this for years. I like doing what I do. I like talking about other topics. I like doing reports on other things. I really do. But when it comes to this topic that I'm talking about here, this is the most important topic. If you don't understand half of what I said today, you're wrong. You don't understand anything. You're living a lie. If you can't comprehend what I'm trying to explain today, or what I did explain today, nothing will make sense. You will constantly just trip over your feet like Charlie Brown. You'll constantly be looking this and that. Like, people don't even understand what the foreign policy of the neocons really is. They'll be like, Adam Kinzinger is a neocon. Every Republican can't stand Adam Kinzinger. They think he's the most deep state controlled opposition. Adam Kinzinger's a fraud. From right wing to this wing to that wing, like they all hate Adam Kinzinger, right? Go to Adam Kinzinger, and he has 3 flags in his bio. What are the three flags that Adam Kinzinger, that every Republican can't stand, every Trump supporter can't stand, every conservative can't stand? What are the three flags that he has in his bio? America, Israel, Ukraine. Lindsey Graham, a neocon that most Trump supporters and even most Zionists, they can't stand Lindsey Graham. They think he's a fraud. What are the two countries besides America that Lindsey Graham shills for the most? Israel and Ukraine. When it comes to Joe Biden, what are two countries that he gave the most foreign aid to? Ukraine and Israel. Donald Trump, who's he going to give the most aid to? I don't know about Ukraine at this point, because that's why it seems like a lot of people hate him. And that's where these people tend to disagree with him. But he's, I'm just saying that is the neocon agenda. Like there's a connection between all of these countries. Israel, the connection's obvious. I mean, you're not supposed to say this. Like, I'm not supposed to say this. And usually I try to be more careful about it. But in my opinion, and you're not, once again, this is going to come at a cost probably to, character smears, but I believe they control America. You're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say that they infiltrated and control America. You're not supposed to say it, but I just said it because I believe that. Oh, well. And it's backed by obvious, it would be like me saying, I believe America controls Ukraine. Is that hate speech? No, I have enough evidence to say that America has infiltrated Ukraine and basically controls it. Zelenskyy pretty much admits that. He's like, I can't do anything without your money. Yeah, we know, bro. You couldn't have got there without our money either. But in general, and what I said about Ukraine, that's why they care so much about Ukraine. They don't care about the Ukrainian and Russian people. We control Ukraine, so they put a Ukraine flag in their bio. We are controlled by the other country, so they put the other country flag in their bio. That's what the neocon agenda is and what it always has been. There's a little more nuance to it. If I had more time, I'd maybe get into it. But it's just like, that's why Lindsey Graham agrees with Adam Kinzinger. That's why Adam Kinzinger agrees with Mark Levin. That's why Mark Levin agrees with Ben Shapiro. There's one topic that they're just all in unison. Okay, they have a right to feel that way. They have a right to do a podcast and tell people what they think. Sure. I'm not going to call them hateful. I'm not going to call them bigots or anti blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to be like, here's what I think. But you know what they'll call me? An anti-Semite. Why? Because I don't know, everything I said in this podcast, that was true. Like, I read the Times of Israel. If I were to just say what the Times of Israel said without that in front of me, that's like crazy anti-Semitism. But when the Times of Israel says it, it's just journalism, right? When they say it, journalism. When you say it, anti-Semitism. Okay. But this topic is so important because it's the core of our foreign policy. It's the core of our domestic policy. It's the core of our foreign aid. It's the core of everything. This concept that people don't understand about the battles between, yeah, they know left and right, but they don't understand the Bolsheviks and they don't understand that angle of it. Someone said, do I know the backstory of Putin besides the EKB? He was a German far-left militant group until 1998. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm not justifying or advocating for anything that Vladimir Putin does. And I'm not doing that because I'm afraid. It's just, I don't care about Russia or Putin in that sense. I'm just saying, regardless of where he came from, I know he's well connected. I know he has a questionable past. He has a questionable present. I'm just saying who they want to replace him with is going to be more like a Lenin than it's going to be like somebody who actually likes the country. And it's not really our place to destroy other countries like we've destroyed others and our own at this point. That's my take in a more simplistic way. But yeah, I don't know. I think every year more and more people figure out what I'm saying right now. It becomes more and more obvious and more like you can't possibly be an intellectual and you can't possibly study politics without coming to this conclusion, or at least having a conversation about this conclusion that isn't shut down by censorship or getting banned from a foreign country or being called a word, like with Candace Owens, right? And I'm not justifying everything she's ever said or done because she does a lot of things that I don't really pay attention to. With that being said, Candace Owens, to her credit, she said, I want to debate Shapiro. I want to debate this. Like sit down with me. A few people did. Rabbi Barclay sat down with her. I think that interview's been deleted, but if you could find it, it's a fascinating interview. I love watching two people. It's like there's a reason a lot of people don't want to debate Candace Owens, because although, she might not be tolerable to some people or whatever, it's easy to call her hateful. She's anti-Semitic. She's hateful. She's just so hateful. She's crazy. She's going crazy. She's always been a little crazy. You know what I'm saying? Her energy has always been like wild and crazy. That's what made her famous. She's crazy, just going off on people all the time. Like, she's been that way. They never started calling her that until she started talking about Israel and Jewish stuff throughout history that they don't want people to talk about. She got banned from Australia. But it's like, if these people that say she's so crazy and so racist and so hateful and so anti-Semitic sat down and have a debate with her, which they won't, she'll talk to anybody. And these people won't talk to her. I've known this for years. They just have fake conversations with Tom Cotton and Ted Cruz to entertain the dumb boomers that watch their shows. I'm not trying to be a dick, but that's just what they do. It's like, if you watched Candace sit down with somebody that called her anti-Semitic, 90% of the people, just like when Piers Morgan has debates and stuff, read the comment section. It's like 90% of people agree with her, and the people calling her hateful just look silly. You understand? It's like there's a reason that they just run and call people hateful all the time, because they don't want to engage with what people are talking about. I'm not saying it's everybody all the time. I'm not blaming everybody. It's just like certain things are certain patterns that need to be talked about. It's the same thing with the crime rate. People could say all they want, but there's a huge, gaping, obvious truth about the crime rate in the United States. And for that case, the UK and Canada too. There's one ethnic group committing a large majority of the violent crime. And people don't like violent crime, so they don't want that. So there needs to at least be a conversation about it. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going to read it real quick. Hannah Banana said, I'm a little late for the live stream. We'll catch up on the replay. Thanks for showing to inform us. Much love. Thank you for the $50 super chat. But I want to say this real quick. It's like, it doesn't make you racist to talk about that topic. It's like, can we get to the bottom of this, or are we just going to live in a country that violent crime is just a normal in a city? It doesn't have to be a normal. It's not a normal in a lot of countries. It's not a normal in some European countries. It's not normal in Asia. Why is it normal here? Why is it getting normalized in the UK? It's not normal. To some people, it's not normal. So I don't want it normalized. I want to have a conversation about it without both sides of the equation calling everybody racist, so we can have cities that are not so violent. That's what I want. It's the same with other things. If Trotsky flew to America and was of a certain ethnic group, and he met with a press of a certain ethnic group that was pushing socialism, and they said that their ethnicity was a big inspiration to what they were doing, and hate towards their group was a big inspiration to what they're doing, there's an ethnic component to what they're doing, whether you think what they're doing is right and wrong. And then if they fly back over to Russia as a self-admitted different ethnic group and then commit an atrocity of millions of people dying, and you never learn about it in school, can you not talk about that? Well, Republicans won't talk about that because they're cowards and they're frauds and they're liars, and they care more about money than they and social, connections than they care about their country or reality. I don't care about all that stuff. I'm not under an NDA. I'm not working for a news corporation that can, hang dollars over my head. And if I lost it all, I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, obviously that's not the goal. But in general, it's like, this needs to be a part of the conversation. And here's the thing as well that I'll say before I leave. If we really, like the people who really want to stop hate, in order to stop hate, we need to have real conversations. If you can hate an ethnic group, but if they notice that you're hating them, you call them hateful and you pass speech laws and you do lopsided things and you fund organizations, racial organizations of different races that hate them, how is that going to stop hate? It's fueling hate. But just like with Al Sharpton to the Black community, there's an industry of hate, and there's a lot of different ethnic groups that benefit off it. But in general, are you not allowed to say that there's one in that side? Are you not allowed to talk about that one? Because it's a huge puzzle piece to the racial division going on, because not only are they doing it, but there's a lot of people bankrolling the Black groups that are doing it, from the NAACP to Black Lives Matter. That's just a fact. It's not hate speech. That's a fact. That's a provable fact that I've made journalistic videos proving, because there's videos of the people bankrolling BLM and saying how they came to be how they be. And there's an ethnic component to it, just like there's an ethnic component to BLM for Black people. It's not hateful to say. That's the truth. It's just most people don't know this because there's a concerted effort not to show you, and there's a concerted effort to make everybody talking about it look crazy or hateful when it's not crazy or hateful. It's the reality of the world we live in. It's the number one most prevalent reality to the speech laws in the Western world and the things that get you banned from foreign countries, thrown in jail in foreign countries. That, like, you look at Germany now, they're raiding people's houses for posts online. UK has hate speech laws. Canada has hate speech laws. What's the number one hate speech law that's exactly the same in America, that's exactly the same in Canada, that has the exact same definition in Spain, that has the exact same definition in Brazil, that is the exact same definition in Australia, that is the exact same definition in Germany, that is the exact same definition in the UK? What hate speech law has a one singular Western definition that they list a bunch of phrases and say that this is anti-Semitic hate speech? I just told you, it's the Anti-Semitism IHRA, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, working definition of anti-Semitism that's been passed into legislation by Ron DeSantis, that's been passed into legislation by Donald Trump, that's been passed into legislation by everybody from, look at Kathy Hochul. All these people are passing the same definition. Sao Paulo, Brazil, same definition. Canada, same definition. England, same definition. Germany, same definition. Australia, same definition. It's the same hate speech rule all over the Western world. Why? How could someone get the same exact definition into every country? That's crazy. How could it possibly be that group has influence, or no? It just magically gets in every country because every country just magically comes up with the same definition. No, they're handed the definition and then they pass it through legislation. So without the knowledge of this, nothing else really makes sense. And God bless Donald Trump with all his flaws and shortcomings. I do believe, and I said this when that weird guy who was camped out in a tree that worked for Ukraine or whatever, like it was like some weird American guy who worked in Ukraine and like, you know, he was like hiding on Trump's golf course. This is why people hate Donald Trump. I understand that people realize that he does things that are not great. I understand that people realize that in some cases, Trump is in on certain things. I see that. But at the end of the day, Trump, he's not 100% in on it. And when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, they don't want Trump to strike a deal unless he's just the cleanup guy. He comes in Israel, Palestine, figures out a deal, comes in Ukraine and Russia, figures out. It's possible Trump could just be the cleanup guy. It could be like the puppet that's the cleanup guy where it's like, okay, war's over. We've done enough damage. Now we need some fake controversy and we need you to like pretend to figure it out or something. It's possible. People could have that idea. But, you know, a huge portion of me does think that Trump is doing something that they do not want to be done in Ukraine. And the reason that they don't want it done is because that's their puppet. And the reason that Mark Levin and people like Ben Shapiro and others are very similar to the left when it comes to Ukraine is because they have a very similar foreign policy that doesn't 100% line up with Donald Trump's. It's okay to not completely align with Donald Trump's foreign policy. That's fine. But this is all my opinion of why they're different, because they're not going to say what I just said. And they're not going to show their audience what I just said, because if that's ever shown or there's ever a real discussion or a guest on showing that, it's going to nullify all the other things that they filled your mind up with and fill in puzzle pieces into the history of Ukraine and Russia that were not filled in. Because once you fill them in, it's like, well, yeah, now that makes sense that they don't want to let America in. Yeah, that makes sense. If you know, a guy flew to America, then flew back to Russia, and then launched a Marxist-Leninist revolution that killed millions of people, that makes sense why they don't want Zelenskyy to win the war or to, you know, be funded by the same people pushing against their border, and Lindsey Graham like declaring war a couple of years ago as he's bankrolling the country. Like, it makes sense. It's not justifying everything he ever does, but if people that hate Americans and have notoriously and historically killed Americans sent a bunch of weapons to Mexico, and then China was flying over to Mexico, Xi Jinping was in Mexico saying, let's go to Texas, let's take over Texas. If Texas then retaliated, I would not say, oh, Texas started it, not China. No, if that happened, I'd be like, China started it, and whoever they're working with in Mexico started it, and they pushed, and then Texas took a preemptive measure to try to stop the invasion. All of what I'm saying happened in Ukraine, and there's videos and documents to prove it. They've been declaring war on Russia for years before the invasion. And also the dynamic of the areas that they're talking about, like I know Donbass was one of them, and I forget the other one, but during Obama there was some controversy where there was an invasion in one of the things. If you went to Ukraine, there's a mixed bag. It's like there's a huge portion of the country that is Russian, speaks Russian, and to be honest, is sympathetic towards Russia. And then there's the Ukrainians that work with the rest. So the regions of Russia that it's happening to, they want to be a part of Russia. I get that people don't want that to happen, but it's just like, I don't know. What if the Czech Republic and Slovakia decided to be Czechoslovakia again? Would we start a war there to prevent them from doing it? Like, why would we care? I'm Czechoslovakian. My grandma or her family came from Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. Now it's the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Why would anyone in America care if they got back together or if one country invaded the other one? Why would anyone care? Why would that be our problem? It's the same thing with Russia and Ukraine. At one point, they were the same country. Ukraine's not that old of a country. It's like very similar to Czechoslovakia or that sort of thing. Like, would we care if Vietnam split apart and North and South Vietnam wanted to change? It's like it wouldn't. No one in America cares about this stuff until they're told to care. Once they're told and conditioned to care, they think they're fighting fascism or they're fighting for democracy. Like, you're not fighting for democracy. And this is the last thing I'm going to say. Then just be honest about that. I would have more respect for these people on Fox News if they said, we're working with Ukraine. Russia's a threat to ours. We want to fund Ukraine, and we want to fight and overthrow Vladimir Putin. Even though I think that's pretty crazy, I would have more respect for someone being honest about it. Not these idiots that people believe where they're like, when's the election coming in Russia? You don't care about an election. When's a fair election? You don't want a fair election. You would hate a fair election in Russia. You want a fake election with a Western puppet. Just like in Ukraine, you don't want a fair election, a real election, or else you'd push the road in Ukraine. Just be honest to your audience. We don't want fair elections. We want Western puppets everywhere. We want to control every single country that we can. And if we control every single country, then we could just stop elections completely because then we control the country. It's not right. It's not a good idea, but that's honest. It's more honest than being like, it's about democracy. It's not about democracy. It doesn't matter if Mike Pence says that or a left winger says that. Like, anybody that believes that at this point, it's just so low IQ. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. God bless you. God bless America. God bless your family. God bless the world. Hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, it is what it is. It's definitely controversial, I guess, to some people, but it's just such a crucial part of all of this equation. If you can consider it and at least consider what I'm saying, that's a huge step. Don't have to agree with everything or believe everything. I'm not asking for that. Just consider it. Because then when you consider what I'm saying and then you listen to what other people are saying, you can start to bounce ideas off each other and notice the gaping holes. Anybody that tells you that they care about democracy in Ukraine or Russia, they're lying. Even if they have good intentions or they have it, that's like anyone that like, dude, come on. But that's a fair question to ask Putin. Sure. It's also a fair question to ask Putin to say like, what's the best restaurant in St. Petersburg or why is this person in prison when you should let a journalist out? These are all fair questions to ask Putin, but it's like, what's the true motive and what's the true agenda going on? It's not about fair questions or fair elections or fair, because the same people asking the fair question to Putin, when's your next election, Putin? Yeah, I agree. When's your next election? When's Zelensky's next election? They're not asking that question because they don't want an election in Ukraine. It's like, I don't like hypocrisy. I have more respect for people who would say, we're funneling a plant in, of course they can't tell you that, but we're funding a plant in Ukraine to try to overthrow the leader of Russia, to establish a Western plant. And whether it helps or hurts Russia, we don't care because we think it helps our agenda. That is the honest truth of what's going on. That's the truth. I would be like, okay, I mean, that's a little wild, but the world's wild. Nah, it's democracy. It's freedom. We're fighting fascism and authoritarianism. No, you're not. People don't even believe elections in America. When Democrats lose, they think it's rigged. When Republicans lose, they think it's rigged. The confidence on elections in America is an all-time low. Most of the country thinks the world's going. Most of the country thinks the country's going in the wrong direction. Yet you care about freedom and democracy. And come on, dude. Appreciate it. God bless you. Have a beautiful day. I'll be back in a couple of days. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support.